Things are different at Kansas and the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, one of the top contenders in the Big 12. High expectations in 2024, as high as they've been in a long time. And we're going to go through and give you predictions for every single game. First, just some thoughts on this Kansas team. It all starts with Jalen Daniels at quarterback. Can he stay healthy? That's the big key. He's had the injury problems. If he can stay healthy, this is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Potentially the best quarterback. I mean, he has that type of potential. You look at the rest of the offense, they are loaded at running back, really good running back room. Wide receiver is pretty solid. Offensive line could be better, but yeah, overall offensively, this team's going to be very, very solid. And then on the defensive side, you know, this cornerback position might be the best in the Big 12. And they're really good at cornerback, but linebacker is a concern. So I'm a little bit concerned about these linebackers. You look at the defensive line, the safety, those positions I think are going to be solid. But again, great at corner, not so great at linebacker. At least that's my take on the Jayhawks. So here's the schedule. Look at Vegas. Look at the win total. 8.5 wins. That's the over/under. I can't remember that number being that high for Kansas. Maybe ever. I know they had like 15 years ago, whatever the year was, where with Tommy Rees, where they were pretty good, but I don't know if preseason expectations were that high. 8.5 wins. So yeah, Vegas thinks 8-4, 9-3. The most likely scenarios for Kansas, which honestly 8-4 would be a very solid season for a program like Kansas. So let's get into the predictions. They start with Lindenwood, Thursday night game to kick off the season. That should be an easy win. So we'll give them a 1-0 start. They play Illinois the next week, September 7th. On the road, could be a little bit tricky. I'm not high on Illinois this year if you followed me this offseason. But it is on the road. The physical style of Illinois, you know, at the line of scrimmage, maybe they're better than Kansas, but I think if you look at the skill positions and all that, especially the cornerback position, like I talked about, Kansas does have a big advantage here. So yeah, Illinois is going to try to slow this game down, and maybe they hang around, keep it close. But I think Kansas ultimately will pull away. I've got the Jayhawks winning this one, and then they play UNLV the next week. That's actually a Friday night game, so a quick turnaround. Going on the road and then coming back home. With a quick turnaround, maybe they start off a little bit slow, but I think the crowd will be really fired up for this. Friday night games usually have a great home field advantage. And so I think Kansas, they should be able to take care of this one without too much trouble. All right, next, you got West Virginia coming up September 21st. This is a similar team to Illinois, but a much better team. The line of scrimmage, they're going to be really good. I think that's where they have a big advantage over Kansas. Their run game with the linebacker question at Kansas, it's going to be a problem. This is just not a good matchup for the Jayhawks. I think that run game for West Virginia and their defense, it's going to be enough. Plus playing in Morgantown, tough place to play. Give me West Virginia. I feel pretty confident in the Mountaineers just because of this matchup. You got TCU next on September 28th at home. This is another team that's going to be pretty good in the trenches. They've got really good wide receivers. It's going to be a great matchup. The wide receivers of TCU versus the cornerbacks of Kansas. That'll be one of the big highlights of this game. But you also look at TCU's defense. They've got a lot of athletes. They can fly around. They actually have a lot of talent. If you look at this TCU roster, it's more talented than you might think. I think TCU is going to get this one. I'm going to go with the Horned Frogs to beat Kansas, and that drops them to 3-2. And then after 2 losses in a row, you got to go on the road to play Arizona State. No bye week before this game. You'd like to have maybe a bye week before going out west, although I guess Kansas to Arizona is not that far. But still, it's a matchup that I don't really like for Kansas. Again, kind of like the West Virginia game. It's on the road, first of all. You've got an Arizona State team that's not going to get many wins this year. So when they get a chance and they have an opportunity to get a big win, you know they're going to go all out, and that place will be fired up. They're going to have a really good run game, which, again, could be a weakness for Kansas on defense. And you look at the defensive line for Arizona State, that's actually a pretty good strength for this team. I think we see an upset here. Look, upsets happen all the time. I think this is a spot. Kansas, after losing 2 in a row, maybe their confidence is shaken a little bit, and they get upset by Arizona State, and they drop to 3-3. But I do think it'll get better from there. They've got Houston the next week on October 19th, back at home. Going to be a pretty good Houston team. Some people not as high on them as maybe I am, but I actually think, again, with Willie Fritz there as the new coach, I think they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be well coached. This is a pretty even matchup here, but I think Kansas is the better team. Their explosiveness on offense will be the difference. Plus, playing at home, I've got Kansas winning this one. All right, next we got Kansas State on October 26th. And I think if they do indeed lose 3 games, maybe Kansas State overlooks Kansas a little bit in this rivalry. I know it's a rivalry, but still, if they're sitting there at 4-3, maybe Kansas State's thinking, this will be an easy game. We're at home. And again, you look at the running back position, the wide receivers for Kansas. I think that's going to be a problem for the Kansas State defense. It's really a great matchup. I think these teams are actually very, very even this year. But I do think if the game is close, if I'm looking at the 2 quarterbacks, I trust Jalen Daniels a little bit more. I think he makes a play late. And they go on the road and they upset Kansas State. I'm going Jayhawks here, which is something that most people probably are not predicting. But hey, it happens all the time in college football. You've got Iowa State next, November 9th. Iowa State's going to be a solid team, an experienced team. I wonder about their offense being able to keep up with a team like Kansas. Again, I think they're going to be very explosive on that side of the ball. So yeah, it's at home. I think Kansas gets the win here, but it's close. Close win over Iowa State. So I think really three close wins in a row after 3 pretty close losses in a row. So win 3, lose 3, win 3. Does that mean they're going to lose their last 3? Well, BYU is next. Road game here. I don't think, I've said this many times, I don't think BYU is going to be very good. I'm not sold on them offensively with what they've got there, and they're going to be pretty young. I think Kansas is just a better team. I'm going Jayhawks, so 4 wins in a row. Then you've got Colorado coming up next on November 23rd. You talk about a shootout. This one should be a shootout. I think we'll see a lot of points in this game. Both teams going to be able to air it out. I think the run game for Kansas will be really big. It's just both offenses, I think, are going to have an advantage here. But if there is a defensive spot that you'd like to have here, it's those cornerbacks for Kansas. And if they can slow down these great Colorado receivers enough and their offense can do what it needs to do, I think they can win this game. So I'm going Jayhawks at home over Colorado. That improves them to 8-3. And then you get to the final game of the season. It's on the road at Baylor. I'm not expecting Baylor to have a great season this year, but it could be one of those games where Baylor just has nothing to lose. And you look at this Baylor team, they've got some weapons on offense. I like their balance on offense. I think they'll be able to run the football pretty well this year, which again could be a problem for Kansas. It's just one of those where, yeah, I think Kansas is clearly the better team, but it's on the road late in the season, last game of the season. Baylor desperate for a win to close out their season, probably not even going to make it to a bowl game, and they show up and they pull off an upset. So I'm going upset here, and Kansas loses to Baylor. So I've got 8-4. 9-3 is absolutely a possibility, but when you look at these games, Kansas State, Iowa State, Colorado, all 3 of those games could definitely be losses. So yeah, maybe they don't get upset by Arizona State and Baylor, but maybe they lose to Kansas State and Colorado, or Kansas State and Iowa State, however it falls. So I think 8-4 is a pretty fair prediction here for Kansas. Still a solid season, but it's going to be tough in the Big 12, and I think these teams are going to beat up on each other, and Kansas will be a victim of that, and still, again, finish with a solid season, but not quite enough to get them to the Big 12 championship with 4 losses. So you guys agree? Do you disagree? Give me your thoughts on Kansas, your predictions down in the comments below.